Hello, I'm Wes Shelbourne, Executive Head of Just Lincolnshire here at YMCA Lincolnshire. Welcome to our series of podcasts, Courageous Conversations. These podcasts provide a space to explore inclusion, fairness, belonging and safety. Some of the content will be challenging and not always an easy listen, but these conversations will be people's own lived stories that will open up doors that allow for a deeper exploration and understanding of the issues we discuss. Our first podcast is Abbie and Emily's story, a tale of the legacy and damage of abuse, but ultimately a story of redemption and hope.
Just Lincolnshire. What sort of world do you want to live in?
So, Abbie, you're a really active ambassador for Just Lincolnshire. What does it actually mean to you about being an ambassador for Just Lincolnshire?
I think for me, it's just about that change and just really help to contribute to society, empowering other people and sort of being from the LGBT community as well. I think there is generally so much work to do to have that sense of inclusion and belonging.
And by you meeting us, we've now got Emily on board who wants to be an ambassador for us. So going forward, we're going to be able to work with you, Emily, in your roles and with your own sort of personal views as well. So we're really, as an organisation, looking forward to being able to do that.
Amazing. I'm super looking forward to it,
Excellent.
really.
And both of you are really clearly very good friends and have been for a number of years. So tell me, how did you first meet?
So we met in school. Abbie and I sat opposite each other in a lesson and we sort of formed a bond through that, didn't we?
And we've been friends ever since we were 11.
And clearly you're both in a really good place now. But it's not always been like that for you, has it?
No.
Would that be fair to say that there have been things that you've gone through together that have made you not have such a settled life as you would have liked? So, Emily, I just wanted to sort of pick this up with you at the start of this, really. I think you met this man first.
I did.
And started to work with him. How old were you at the time?
I just turned 13.
And how did you actually meet him to start with?
It was a friend from school. It was a family member's friend. And he had this business, and I think she was like looking to work alongside them as well. Kids my age were then starting to get into Saturday jobs, doing paper rounds, all that sort of stuff. Basically, in my head, I was like, I'm going to be with my friend and getting paid for it. So I was really happy about it. And he worked in like a children's entertainment. There was obviously forms and stuff that I needed to fill in. So I thought, oh, amazing, this is like a proper job. I've got to sign things. And it was well before the time of any DBS check. And there was loads of other work people there as well. And for me, looking back, obviously, they're huge red flags. But it was like, I saw them as like a banter sort of thing. So people were laughing and joking and making like sexual innuendos to each other and commenting on each other. And then it started to happen with me as well. So there was sort of like including me, or I felt like, oh yeah, you're including me in it. But it always came from him. It didn't come really from anyone else. It was always from him. He'd remark on how my body looked or how my hair was or something. There was always something in there. And in my head, I just thought, oh yeah, I'm now part of this team. We're now together sort of thing. I felt like I was included. So it must have been, I don't even know. I can't even think now. I don't think it was long before it sort of like went almost straight into it. I think we'd had to go away for a weekend to do this event. They'd got permission from my parents because we were travelling up the country. And we were staying over in a hotel, but there was like loads of people there. It wasn't just with him. There was other people there as well. And these people who I then considered obviously my friends. Yeah, that's when it sort of started to go a little bit further downhill. I think it was actually the weekend before. We'd just done a normal one. And it was when we were in the van coming back and there was me and my friend. So normal, it was him, me and my friend. And he dropped my friend off first. And then he was going to go drop me off. But he didn't. And he sort of turned round and went a completely different way to a completely secluded area. And that's when the first time it happened. I didn't know what was going on. It was just sort of like what is this? What's going on? Sort of looking back now, I want to scream at myself going, just use your phone, ring your dad, ring your mum, whatever, just get out of there. But as a kiddie, you just listen to what this person, who's now like he was your boss, he was my boss. So it was like, oh, can you jump in the back and help me with this? Yeah, of course I can, not a problem. I want to be helpful, I want to be a good worker. But it wasn't like moving things around in the back of the van. That's the first time it actually happened to me.
And that was when he raped you the first time?
It was indeed, yeah.
And that would be your first ever experience of this sort of thing happening?
It was, yes, I was a virgin, so
Yes.
yeah, first time.
Yeah. He then just dropped you home?
Yeah, without a word, no nothing. There was no sort of like, oh, don't tell anyone or anything like that. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. It was stone silence all the way back to my mum and dad's house, dropped me off, and then he was like, I'll see you next week. And that was it. It was like nothing had happened. And I remember going into my mum and dad's house, and mum was like, oh, how did you get on? Were you all right? How was everything? And I was like, I'm really tired, mum. And I remember just running upstairs. And because obviously it was my first time as well, I'd bled a lot. There was a lot of blood. So, yeah, I was like, I can't show my mum this because what am I going to say? How do I go around saying this to her? I don't know what to do. So I ended up just getting rid of all my clothes, getting changed, having a shower. It must have been the longest shower I've ever had in my life. Just had a shower and then got into bed, and mum was like, oh, bless her, she must be tired. She must have had a hard weekend.
And then you saw him the next weekend?
Yeah, and that's when we were going away up the country, yeah.
And there was no conversation again, I guess?
It was just like normal. Well, I didn't really know what to expect. I was obviously anxious going round and sort of like seeing everybody. I thought, do they know? Do I tell them? What do I say? I mean, he looks like he's a respected person in my eyes. At that time, he was a respected person. He was a good boss to other people. To be fair, he was a good boss to me in the sense of what is now how I realise is grooming. But yeah, so we'd literally just got in the van, and I remember saying to one of the other girls, I says, can I travel with you? And I didn't want to go in the van, so I didn't, and I ended up travelling in a car instead. So I was out of the way.
But presumably that continued?
It did, yes, over and over, yeah. So that weekend that we actually had to go up country, we was all staying in a hotel, and it happened again. Somehow I ended up being in the room on my own with him, and then he locked the door, and I'm like, oh, God, here we go again. But yeah, as a 13-year-old girl, I didn't know what to say, so I just didn't say anything.
So at some point, whilst all of this had been going on for a period of time, I guess, you were still friends with Abbie. What made you involve Abbie in the work situation? Was she looking for work, or?
I think you were, weren't you?
Yeah, so I remember you telling me about, that you was working and you was earning quite good money, and that you got free fags. So we were both smoking underage back when we were 13, 14. And I had no idea what was happening to Emily at all. And then we just had a bit of a conversation, and you said, I think when I was about 15, I think it was, and do you want to come and earn some money? And I thought, yeah, brilliant, putting up all these different entertainment things for children. And I went round, had a bit of a chat with him. Initial thoughts were, oh, this is a pleasant environment. Again, looking back, it was certainly grooming. I did several jobs with him and with Emily. Cash in hand, money, go back the next weekend, do it again. And we did that for probably a good 3 or 4 months before something happened to me.
And all of this time, was things still happening to you?
Yeah, the whole time, every single time.
And I suppose that by having Abbie with you, you felt safer?
I did, yeah. That was... Because I'll still never forgive myself for it. I wanted to take Abbie with me so that I felt safer. So she was my safety net. It was only if I was on my own or with other people, and then he'd move me to a different room. But when Abbie was there, nothing. So she was my safety blanket.
And I'm guessing from, giving you cigarettes and all of this business, you were feeling quite special?
Yeah.
And grown up?
And also, I think, as a 14, 15-year-old, you don't really have anywhere to go these days. So it was somewhere where it was warm, it was sheltered, he'd put whatever we wanted on TV, could sit and have a fag in his house. Initially, I felt really safe and welcomed. But yeah, there was this one particular event that he'd asked us both to stay over the night before. So I said to my parents, I'm staying at Emily's tonight, we've got an early start. Emily did the same.
Yeah, I said to my parents, I'm going to stay at Abbie's tonight.
And I think, in hindsight, and probably at the time, I thought it's a little bit strange. Why am I lying to my mum and dad about this? But I didn't really think anything of it. I just thought it's going to save me a long walk in the morning, early doors. We had to go to a different part of the country for the event. So, we had some nice wine and, again, cigarettes, and had some tea. I then projectile vomited across the floor. Which I thought, that's not really like me to projectile vomit, but it is what it is. Maybe it's just a little bit too much wine. We both went upstairs to bed, and then my life changed.
And you were quite used to him giving you some form of alcohol as a social drink?
Not alcohol. No, this was the first time we'd had it, and we thought, oh, nice one. We're going to be able to have a drink or something, didn't we? And we was only 14, 15 at that time anyway, so it was like, oh, nice, we'll get a drink. But looking back now, we didn't drink that much. So for you to be as poorly as what you were, that should have been a red flag. But yeah, but then we thought that we would be okay anyway, because we were basically sent to bed, because he got very angry at this point. So we were both sent to bed, and we went to the same bedroom together and stayed together.
In the same bed?
In the same bed, yeah.
Yeah. He gave us his bedroom, and said, you can both share and I'll sleep in the spare room. So again, when he said that, before we even stayed round, we thought, oh, OK, great, at least we're safe, we're together.
And so at some point during the night, he joined you?
Yeah. All I remember of that night was giving each other a cuddle before we went to bed and saying, night, love you, mate, and went to sleep. And then I woke up to him on top of me, raping me. I froze. I was 15, laid in a bed with a fully grown man on top of me, and didn't know what to do other than just do what you need to do. So we ended up going into a different room, because I said, I don't want to wake Emily up. And it continued, I don't even know how long it continued for. But then at the end of that particular time, he said to me downstairs, don't tell Emily because she'll get jealous. I thought, that's a little bit strange. Why would you say that to me? So I then went back to bed, and obviously Emily was in bed, and I just needed some comfort. So I reached out for a cuddle, and Emily just sort of shoved her shoulder as if to say, don't touch me.
Bless her heart, she just came to give me a cuddle, and I just sort of didn't know what to do, and I just sort of moved my arms out of the way, didn't I?
So I was sort of a little bit, oh my God, she knows. Oh my God, what's this all about? She knows what's happened. And then we woke up and we went and did the job, and we never really spoke about it. And it was this big wedge that was in our friendship for many, many, many years, probably for 8 or 9 years, actually, where we never spoke about that situation or that night until I bumped into him in a professional context. And it opened up this really big door in my head that I'd locked away many, many years ago, back when I was 15. And all the emotions that came with that came back with a lot of a vengeance, and I had to deal with a lot of mental health. I used various therapies and various counselling and services to kind of get me into a place to be able to talk about it, of which that's when I explored with my counsellor that I needed to actually speak to Emily. So I reached out to Emily and text and said, can I come round for a brew? Of which you said, yeah, of course, no problem, more than welcome anytime. So I popped round one July afternoon at about midday and ended up leaving at 10 p.m. that night, where we literally spoke about it all. And it was really well and truly needed, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then on the back of that, because I'd not told anybody for all those years, not said a word about it at all. And I think you'd said at one point as well, has anything ever happened to you? And even still, after all them years, that barrier for me was still up. And I was like, no. I want to make sure you're all right. I'm all I felt was remorse for everything, for thinking that I'd ever even stupidly put her in that position. So then that's where my mental health then started to decline. And I took a chunk of time off work to sort of process everything and just sort of get my head around it. And then Abbie had helped me out, and she was like, look, these are the counsellors that I use. They're absolutely fabulous. Go to these people. So I ended up going to these people, and they were brilliant. Absolutely knockout, can't fault them. And that's when I started to sort of like say a bit more and talk about things. But yeah, I think I divulged it to your wife, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Before I'd even mentioned it to Abbie.
Really?
I think you were away in London, and I just ended up bursting into tears, and she was like, what on earth is the matter? And I just literally offloaded to her, and it felt amazing. And for the rest of that night, I just did not stop crying. It was all out at that point. And then that's when we was like, right, we need to tell her. You need to tell Abbie. So then you'd come back, and I think it was that weekend, wasn't it? And we all sat down together.
But what changed for you to make you want to then report it?
That's a really good question. You, for me.
So for me, it was a 14-year-old girl. I was on the way to work, and she was wearing the same uniform that I wore when I was at school. And I let her cross the road in front of me, and I broke down, and I just cried all the way to work because I looked at this little girl and I thought, I can't let you experience something that I've experienced. Then literally a week later, my wife bumped into him at a breakfast bar. He was there, and he didn't know my wife or who she was, but he made a sexual innuendo about it being a Lincolnshire sausage and how it would be a preferred kind of sausage. So when my wife actually told me that just really infuriated me, because I just felt as though, how can this man talk in a sexual nature to my wife who he'd never met? So that just kind of really infuriated me and angered me to really kind of go down the police route as well.
Massively. And then I remember when I think I'd come round to your house, Abbie, with your wife, and you were telling me about it, and literally it was like a flashback. It was literally going back, and I was like, oh wow, it's exactly the same as how he used to be.
I thought, I can't do this anymore, knowing that he is so close to where I live, to my family. After knowing what he'd also done to Emily as well, I had so much anger in me that I thought, I need to report this. But then I had the fear of not being believed. So it was actually my wife and therapists who kind of said, you have to do what's right for you. So I just thought, I'm just going to pick up the phone. So I picked up the phone to 111, and it took several attempts to actually then say it. And I picked the phone up, and when the call taker took the phone, they were the most empathetic individual I've ever spoken to. And that allowed me to say that I'd been sexually assaulted. I couldn't say rape. I was still in that kind of mindset of, how do I acknowledge that this is rape? So I reported it to 111 and then organised a time to go up to the police station. And again, that was a really difficult stage for me to do. But prior to all of that, I had the conversation with you, hadn't I, Emily?
Yeah.
Just to say, I feel like I need to report this. Would you be happy for you to be a witness?
Yeah. Yeah, straight off the bat, I was like, absolutely, yeah. I wasn't ready to do mine at that particular moment, but I was happy to be a witness. The police and people like that, they were fantastic, absolutely amazing. Then gave me the strength to go, well, actually, to help this case go along, this is also what happened to me, and would also then paint a picture for what happened to Abbie. And don't get me wrong, I had so many wobbly moments where I was like, nah, I'm going to withdraw it because it's not even going to get through to CPS. It's not going to go through court. It's going to be a complete waste of time. But every time I had one of those moments, I'd literally phone Abbie, and that'd be it straight away. She'd be like, no, come on, we're doing it. This is it.
We were both in a real fortunate position to sort of ring each other and give each other that little kind of push that we needed sometimes. And I think that's kind of really helped our relationship as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've supported each other in ways that nobody that I know has ever had to support their best friend.
I was in a good position because I had a really good family support as well. And my wife has been my rock from day one for all of this. I can only speak for where I've been. I've been in the lowest places I've ever been in my life, with depression and suicidal thoughts. And it's just, without that support circle and without those services that we were involved with, I do feel we probably wouldn't have achieved as much as we have.
So in terms of the support mechanisms, apart from yourself, if you'd not had each other, what were the best support mechanisms that you found going forward?
The detective that took our case was absolutely amazing. The communication that she gave us was phenomenal. And I think without having that kind of sense of empathy can sometimes really dishearten people who go through this. But in terms of sort of the support services that is for service, so the independent sexual violence advisors, actually for me, was without their support throughout the whole duration whilst waiting for court, I don't think I probably would have got to where I did. That service was critical for me, for my mental well-being, and also for the practical elements of going to court, understanding court, really kind of, seeing what it was like, but also having the opportunity to really discuss and talk things through about what the process entails. I would absolutely highly recommend to utilise that service when it's offered. I also use Lincolnshire Rape Crisis. I don't know what.
So we're basically like chalk and cheese the way that we deal with things. And for me, going into that first initial step through the door at Lincolnshire Rape Crisis, I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. And do I really want to open up this huge can of worms that I'm now putting in front of myself? But these guys were amazing. You sit with them, and I didn't have to say anything. If I wanted to sit there and just cry, then I could do. It wouldn't be an issue. And I really genuinely felt empowered when I came out. I was a big bag of nerves walking in, came out, and I felt like I could take on the world.
And in terms of the process, and I don't like to mention it being a process, but that's absolutely what it is, that you courageously put yourself in. I'm guessing it's lengthy, and it needs to be lengthy to be thorough.
Yeah.
But how does that make you feel when you're absolutely in this situation and waiting for the next part to come? And
that for me was the worst thing. The lengthy waits, the changing dates, everything. It was so difficult for me.
So you got a court date and it was changed a number of times.
Yep.
Delayed and then put back on. Delayed again, put back on. But how did that make you feel as the people being treated in that way?
The emotional rollercoaster that we had daily, of all those different emotions that you feel when you're then told and messed around, where it's impacting on everything. And I was, I was 20 weeks pregnant as well at the time, so it was impacting on my pregnancy, it was impacting on my mental well-being, but it then impacted financially, it impacted on my work, it impacted on the fact that I had to take time off work to then be told that your court dates are moving again. Actually, victims should be put first. And I understand it needs to be a fair trial, but actually, is it a fair trial when victims are the ones who suffer the most? So, I think the whole process needs to be reshuffled, incorporated with lived experience voices who have experienced court as a victim and who have stood in that witness box and who have stood a metre away from the perpetrator who destroyed your life. Yeah. Although they can put measures and special measures in place and a curtain and all that, actually, to know that this person is physically sat behind that curtain makes my stomach churn now, knowing that I suffer with PTSD, plus the anxiety of going into court, of not knowing what it's going to do, of being stood in a box in front of a jury and a room full of people you've never met before and torn to shreds.
It's the daunting walking through that door, the court door initially, to then get yourself into the witness box. That's where I broke down. I thought I'd been as strong as I could be up until that point, and then going in there knowing that they're almost like arm's length away from you. They're just behind a screen or a curtain, and then you've got all these eyes on you and they're expecting you to talk. When we came out of the room, we knew that we had to walk across the public area to get back to the witness room. And there's loads of people in there, and I don't want people to see me crying. I don't, like I've said before, I don't like showing me emotion much anyway. So to have to physically walk that length to get to the witness room, whereas the jury go through a door and they're in a juror's room. And it's like there's more protection for them than there was for the actual witnesses.
Can I just ask you about your victim impact statements? I mean, I guess you both wrote them.
We did, yeah.
And how was that for you? Was it?
So I just want to take you back before we go into the victim impact statement to the day that the jury, that we got a call, I guess, from the jury about the conviction and the fact that the jury had found him guilty. When I got that call to say that he was guilty of all accounts that were put forward to him, I cried absolutely wholeheartedly and was so emotionally vulnerable, I guess, again, because I'd been believed, and I'd been believed again and again and again. And it's as though I think being believed was the biggest relief for me.
Yeah. From the initial sort of like speaking to the detective and being believed just by that one person to then it being taken all the way through to CPS and them going, yeah, charge him. That was huge for me especially. I was like, oh my God, all these years we've kept it bottled and hidden under a carpet, and now look at what is actually, we're being believed, we're being listened to. I'm actually being able to offload every bad thing that's happened to me. And for it to now get to this stage where we're going to be able to help other people and we got a guilty on every single thing, it was amazing. It was such, you believed, and that's it. And everything that we'd been through, I just fell to my knees and just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. We both just cried together because
I think I actually came to your house, actually, I think.
I
think I
did.
walked around and we
You
actually just sort of had that moment where we needed that moment of, our friendship. And yeah, just to get that call was amazing. But then I guess following from that call then came another bit of a journey. Because although he was remanded straight into custody, which absolutely, it was amazing because I knew I was safe. I could go to Asda and I wasn't going to bump into him. I could walk down my street and know he's not going to drive past me. But what came with that was then I had to have a psychological impact assessment to help support with sentencing. And we were told that sentencing was going to be a month later. So I thought, great. I'm going to be halfway through pregnancy, well, a little bit more, but that's fine because I really wanted to go to court because it was a sense of closure for me. But I also really wanted to deliver my victim impact statement. So we were both asked to either put together a victim impact statement about how it made us feel, the impact, obviously, of what had happened to us and everything. And for me, I just felt like I really needed to kind of write it all down and get it all out, and just everything from the littlest things in my victim impact statement, from, how he'd made me feel, how he'd put a wedge in our friendship, how it had ruined my relationship with some of my family members, how it had really impacted on everything in my life for such a long time. I wanted him to hear it, and I didn't care if he listened, but I knew that he couldn't not listen because it was going to be in a room where he can hear. But because of the delays and because of the court and because of the court process and more dates rescheduled, I had the psychological assessment, which reopened a lot of boxes because I had to go right back to basics. I had to go through every single thing that had happened to me. So again, that re-traumatised me again, just to help with the process. And although in my head I thought, great, this is going to really help the process and I'm going to get everything that I can from this, but I didn't actually take it into account what it was doing to me psychologically, and that it was actually unpicking a lot of the work that I'd done to get me through the court process. And and it's like another re-traumatising process. But I participated and I went ahead, and I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, which helped supply some more evidence for court for the sentencing. So at this point, for me, it was very much like, well, my baby's due date is coming closer and closer, and I still don't know when we're going to court for sentencing, and I really need to think about my well-being and my baby's well-being. So again, it got closer and it got moved again. So in my head, I thought, I'm not going. I can't go. So I didn't have that sense of closure that I felt like I needed. So my close sibling said, I'll go for you if you want. You can either turn up or you don't turn up. It's completely up to you, and it obviously depends on baby. The night before, and actually on the morning of court, I said to my wife, I'm going to court. I need to go and I need to hear it. I need to hear what the judge says. I need to hear my sibling deliver what I've written, and I want to just be there. A week later, my baby was born, so it was that close. But to be there and to hear what the judge said really kind of helped me with closure, and to hear what my sibling also delivered and how she empowered me and probably a lot of people in that courtroom.
She was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely just helped me close that book for me.
At this point, I think I'd already sort of half closed the book anyway. And I was like, I don't want him to hear my voice. I don't want him to hear my voice anymore. I don't want to speak to him. I don't want to entertain him. So I'd ask the barrister, I says, do you mind, the prosecution barrister, I said, would you mind reading it for me? He was like, absolutely not. No, of course I can. And he delivered it for me. I got what I needed to on there. And I remember sitting with the detective when she was writing everything down for me. It was a horrible thing to read and to have to actually just get out. And I ended up going back to counselling for a bit after that, because I was like, I've just had to say how I feel and how I've felt for the past however many years it was at that point. So it was like over 10 years at this point. And I'm thinking, oh my God, wow, I really am a car crash almost. Like in my own mind, that's how I felt. But I'm not, and I'm not a car crash and I'm not damaged. That's what happens, unfortunately. And you do feel, I felt so empowered once the victim impact statements and everything had been read. And the judge is then delivering what he needs to deliver, and he's giving his speech, and that I genuinely felt amazing. And we were all sat together. There was my husband, there was me, there was Abbie, Abbie's wife, our Isvas were literally behind us, and you can feel them sort of like just touch you on your shoulder every now and again, just for that little bit of support. It was nothing, but it was like, oh, I know you're there, I feel better. Abbie's family and that were there. And we were all holding hands, and it was like a massive unity. And I loved that, absolutely loved it.
And the outcome was
24 years.
Has to serve 2/3. Waiting to hear the sentence. And the judge came out with, you sentenced to 24 years and you will serve 2/3 of it. And you will be on an extended licence after that as well.
24 years is a very long time to serve. And to know that we've got this far and got that outcome, it's given me the courage, and I really want to empower other people to know that you don't know if you're going to get it unless you try. But I'm also very mindful that sometimes outcomes aren't always necessarily
what you expect or what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even sometimes that being believed as well, and all of that side of things can be really difficult.
Can I just ask, if you were in your shoes now and you were talking to your 14, 15-year-old selves, what advice would you give yourself? I'm thinking about particularly when you'd both told your parents that you were staying at each other's house, and that being a barrier to being able to go home and say, this is what happened.
I think for me, he'd built that trust with my parents. He'd shook my dad's hand because, I've come from a bit of a loving family and a good upbringing and a good background. And, so he'd built that trust with my parents already. So he'd essentially groomed my parents and groomed me. But I think I'd go back and just sort of say, trust your instincts and trust your gut, because I remember when I was 15, this doesn't feel quite right, but I'm going to do it anyway. I've just lied, so I can't really go back on what I've just said. I'm with my best friend. I'm safe. But actually, deep down, my gut instinct was saying, I think you should tell your parents.
What about you, Emily?
I'd say to my 15-year-old self, you're 15, you can't take on the world yet. There's no point in lying to your parents. They will find out about something eventually. Go and tell your parents it is not your fault. I think that's a major one for me. It's not your fault. Don't worry about it. And I distrusted that because I'd been so emotionally and physically groomed that I just thought that nobody's going to listen to me anyway, so there's no point. But telling my 15-year-old self now, yes, you will be listened to. Just go and tell someone.
If there were any opportunities to make any immediate changes, I'm talking about processes and procedures, what would you think could be helped by your experiences when things have gone wrong in procedures?
Court-based stuff for me, really. Changing the dates and just... It's the same for you.
So for me, there's a lot of things that I want to do using this story. You know, Emily mentioned courts. Courts is the biggest thing for me too. Because of the impact that had on me, because of the impact it had on Emily and everyone else in our support system and circle, we've seen that firsthand and we've experienced it. So how can these services use our experiences to change the culture for the future and for those future victims of whatever crime it might be, so that they don't experience the same journey that we've experienced and the impact that it had on us.
Last but by no means least, how are you both now?
I am really good, really good. I've got an amazing house, I've got an amazing husband, amazing family. I have my amazing best friend. We have our friendship back and it is the strongest it has ever been and continues day by day to get stronger. The more we do things like this together and we do different bits to try and help empower people, it empowers us as well.
I'm great too. You know, I genuinely do get a lot from helping others, and I have the most wonderful family. I have my son, I have my best friend, and I think out of all of this, our friendship has blossomed into something that no one will ever break ever again. No one will ever put a wedge in between us ever again. But I think just last words, just know that if you are in a tough place, you can get through it. Use the support services that are available to you and just talk. And it's okay to talk.
It is okay to talk, absolutely.
On behalf of Just Lincolnshire YMCA, I can't wait to carry on this conversation with you both. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Can't thank you enough.
Thank you for listening.
And I think it's really important that we tell people who might be listening to this and in similar situations about where they can go to for that support. You can look on our website, which is justlincolnshire.org.uk, and there will be a link on there to give the details of all of the organisations that are there to help.
Just Lincolnshire. What sort of world do you want to live in?